Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We're going to read through this week's Torah portion, which is Shemini and the book of Leviticus, chapter 9, beginning with verse 1. We'll read through the English translation of it. I'll share with you my with it this year, and then we'll have our conversation about this material. If you'd like to join me in giving a blessing, giving thanks for the opportunity of being together in this moment, feel free to join me. Baruch atah
Adonai Elohim melech haolam asher ishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deeds and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, and I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. On the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, "Take a calf of the herd for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering without blemish, and bring them before God. And speak to the Israelites, saying, Take a he-goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb, yearlings without blemish for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for an offering of well-being to sacrifice before God, and a meal offering with oil mixed in. For today God will appear to you." They brought to the front of the tent of meeting the things that Moses had commanded, and the whole community came forward and stood before God. Moses said, "This is what God has commanded that you do, that the presence of God may appear to you." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Come forward to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering, making expiation for yourself and for the people, and sacrifice the people's offering and make expiation for them, as God has commanded." Rose, would you like to read? We're at verse 8.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. Hold on a second. Oh, you asked me, right?
Verse 8.
Yes, okay, hold on. Verse 8. Okay. Sorry. God spoke to Aaron, saying, "Drink no wine or other intoxicant, you or your sons, when you enter the tent of meeting, that you may not die. This is a law for all time throughout the ages. For you must distinguish between the sacred and the profane, and between the pure and the impure and the pure. And you must teach the Israelites all the laws that God has imparted to them through Moses."
Is this chapter 9? Is this that we're in? Is this chapter 9?
Chapter 9. That's where we're starting.
Chapter 9, verse 8.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. I was getting ahead of myself. I apologize. Okay, verse 8. Aaron's sons brought the blood to him. That one?
It says, Aaron came forward to the altar and slaughtered his
calf of purgation offering. Aaron's son brought the blood to him. He dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar, and he poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. The fat, the kidneys, and the protuberance of the liver from the purgation offering he turned into smoke on the altar, as God had commanded Moses. And the flesh and the skin were consumed in fire outside the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. Aaron's son passed the blood to him, and he dashed it against all the sides of the altar. They passed the burnt offering to him in sections, as well as the head, and he turned it into smoke on the altar. He washed the entrails and the legs and turned them into smoke on the altar with the burnt offering. Next, he brought forth the people's offering. He took the goat for the people's purgation offering and slaughtered it and presented it as a purgation offering like the previous one. He brought forward the burnt offering and sacrificed it according to regulation. He then brought forward the grain offering. Taking a handful of it, he turned it into smoke on the altar, in addition to the burnt offering of the morning. He slaughtered the ox and ram, the people's sacrifice of well-being. Aaron's son passed the blood to him, which he dashed against every side of the altar, and the fat parts of the ox and the ram, the broad tail, the covering, the kidneys, and the protuberance of the liver. They laid these fat parts over the breasts, and Aaron turned the fat parts into smoke on the altar and elevated the breasts and the right thighs as an elevation offering before God, as Moses had commanded. Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them, and he stepped down after offering the purgation offering, the burnt offering, and the offering of well-being. Moses and Aaron then went inside the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the presence of God appeared to all the people. Fire came forth from before God and consumed the burnt offering and the fat parts on the altar. And all the people saw and shouted and fell on their faces.
You and Jim, now we're at the very start of chapter 10, if you'd like to read.
Thank you, Rabbi.
This is, well, oops.
Oh, did you say Jim or Justin?
Sorry. Jim.
Oh. Now Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, each took his fire pan and put fire in it and laid incense on it. And they offered before God alien fire, which he had not enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from God and consumed them. Thus they died. At the instance of God, then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord meant when he said, 'Through those near to me, I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people.'" And Aaron was silent. Moses called Mishael and Elizaphan, sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Come forward and carry your kinsmen away from the front of the sanctuary to a place outside the camp." They came forward and carried them out of the camp by their tunics, as Moses had ordered. And Moses said to Aaron and to his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, "Do not bare your heads and do not rend your clothes, lest you die and anger strike the whole community. But your kinsmen, all the house of Israel, shall bewail the burning that God has wrought. And so do not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For God's anointing oil is upon you." And they did as Moses had bidden.
Thank you. Let me invite David and Susan, if you'd like to continue there, we're at verse 8 of chapter 10.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Here we are. We're live. And then they did according to the word of Moses. And the Lord spoke to Aaron, saying, "Wine and strong drink you shall not drink, you and your sons with you, when you come into the tent of meeting, lest you die. A perpetual statute for your generations, to divide between the holy and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the Israelites all the statutes that the Lord spoke to them by the hand of Moses." And Moses spoke to Aaron, to Eleazar, and to Ithamar, his remaining sons. "Take the grain offering left from the fire offerings of the Lord and eat it as flat cakes by the altar, for it is holy of holies. And you shall eat it in a holy place, for it is your portion and your son's portion from the fire offerings of the Lord, for thus I have been charged."
And you shall eat the breast of the elevation offering and the thigh of the donation in a pure place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, because they have been given as your statutory share and your son's statutory share from the peace offering sacrifices of the children of Israel. They shall bring the thigh of the donation and the breast of the elevation offering with the offerings by fire of the fats to elevate, an elevation offering in front of Hashem, and it shall be yours and your sons with you as an eternal law, as Hashem commanded. And Moses asked about the goat of the sin offering, and here it was burnt. And he was angry at Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons, who were left, saying, "Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the place of the holy? Because it is the Holy of Holies, and he gave it to you for bearing the congregation's crime, for making atonement over them in front of Hashem. Here, its blood hasn't been brought to the holy inside. You should have eaten it in the holy, as I commanded." And Aaron spoke to Moses, "Here today they brought forward their sin offering and their burnt offering in front of Hashem. When things like these have happened to me, if I had eaten a sin offering today, would it be good in Hashem's eyes?" And Moses listened, and it was good in his eyes.
Thank you. And Robert, now we're at the start of chapter 11, if you'd like to read.
Yes, thank you. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the swine, though he divide the hoof, and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean unto you. Of their flesh ye shall not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch, they are unclean to you. These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales in the waters, in the seas and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, and of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. They shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whatsoever hath no fins nor scales in the waters, that shall be an abomination unto you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And now we're at verse 13. If you'd like to come down to earth a little bit and read, that'd be great.
The following you shall abominate among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, the kite, falcon of every variety, all varieties of raven, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, hawks of every variety, the little owl, the cormorant, and the great owl, the white owl, the pelican, and the bustard, the stork, herons of every variety, the hoopoe, and the bat. All winged, swarming things that walk on fours shall be an abomination for you. But you may eat among all the winged, swarming things that walk on fours, all that have above their feet jointed legs to leap with on the ground. Of these you may eat the following: locusts of every variety, all varieties of ball locusts, crickets of every variety, and all varieties of grasshopper. But all other winged swarming things that have four legs shall be an abomination for you.
Okay. And Justin and Linda, now we're at 24. If you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. And through these you will become unclean. Anyone who touches their dead bodies will be unclean until evening. And anyone who carries their carcass shall immerse his garments, and he shall be unclean until evening. Any animal that has a cloven hoof that's not completely split, and which does not bring up its cud, is unclean for you. Anyone who touches them shall become unclean. And among all the animals that walk on four legs, any animal that walks on its paws is unclean for you. Anyone who touches their carcass will be unclean until evening, and one who carries their carcass shall immerse his garments, and he will be unclean until evening. They are unclean for you, and this is unclean for you among creeping creatures that creep on the ground, the weasel, the mouse, and the toad after its species, the hedgehog, the chameleon, the lizard, the snail, and the mole. These are the ones that are unclean for you among all creeping creatures. Anyone who touches them when they are dead will be unclean until evening.
And if any of these dead creatures falls upon anything, it'll become unclean. Whether it is any wooden vessel, a garment, a sack, or a hide, any vessel with which work is done, it shall be immersed in water, but will remain unclean until evening, and it'll become clean again. But any earthenware vessel into whose interior any of them falls, whatever is inside it shall become unclean, and you shall break the vessel itself. If any food that is usually eaten, upon which water comes, will become unclean, and any beverage that is usually drunk, which is in any vessel, shall become unclean, and anything upon which any of their carcasses of these animals fall shall become unclean. Thus, an oven or a stove shall be demolished. They're unclean, and they shall be unclean for you. But a spring or a cistern, a gathering of water, remains clean. However, one who touches their carcass shall become unclean. And if of their carcass falls upon any sowing seed, which is to be sown, it remains clean. But if water is put upon the seeds, and any of their carcass falls on them, they are unclean for you. If an animal that you normally eat dies,
Well, let me
one
invite,
who go sorry, stop.
thank you so much. Catherine, we're at verse 39.
Thank you, Rabbi. If an animal that you may eat has died, anyone who touches its carcass shall be unclean until evening. Anyone who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and remain unclean until evening. And anyone who carries its carcass shall wash his clothes and remain unclean until evening. All the things that swarm upon the earth are an abomination. They shall not be eaten. You shall not eat among all the things that swarm on the earth anything that crawls on its belly, or anything that walks on fours, or anything that has many legs, for they are an abomination. You shall not draw abomination upon yourselves through anything that swarms. You shall not make yourselves unclean therewith, and thus become unclean. For I, Adonai, am your God. You shall sanctify yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not make yourselves unclean through any swarming thing that moves upon the earth. For I, Adonai, am he who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. These are the instructions concerning animals, birds, all living creatures that move in water, and all creatures that swarm on earth, for distinguishing between the unclean and the clean, between the living things that may be eaten and the living things that may not be eaten.
Oh, thank you. In the final reading, which Catherine just provided us, I'm was focused. She brought my attention to what may be the kind of meta theme here, which are trying to distinguish between what is and what draws us into that which is somehow what was called here impure, that which draws us and has an essence of that which is pure, this distinction between pure and impure. So it's a difficult and rich and befuddling for many of us text. And so I'd like to share with you the way I found my way, how I found my way into it this year and how I found my way through it. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging something that the last time we met, something that David and Susan brought up. The last time we met, David and Susan asked the question, is there a relationship between the verb shamar to guard over and shema to hear? And my immediate response was a rather literal response, which is, well, no, they're two different roots. And then after I thought about that literal response, I did pivot a little bit, and I gave a more perhaps imaginative response. Well, yeah, maybe there is a connection between to watch over something, to guard over something, and to be attentive to be attentive about something. And we played with that notion a little bit. And so that was one of the entry points I had for this week's portion for myself, which was to look at a couple of words that are here in this week's portion. And I wondered, I wonder if there's a connection between them. And so the two words are the verb to speak, para, which of course this whole book is named Ayikra, which is spelled with resh aleph. And then another word which is prominent here in this portion and throughout, which is karen, which is with resh bet, which means to draw close. So the letters are almost the same, except the last letter, instead of for switches a bet for an aleph, and a B for an A, we might say. And so is there a relationship between these two notions of speaking and drawing close? Is there something about our capacity to use language that draws us close to that which we want to have a relationship with? So that's just something that I want to thank David and Susan for inspiring me to look at the words that on their surface have no relationship to one another, but there's something that rings true about a relationship between them. So we're going to explore maybe that's just general notion of looking beyond the obvious, beyond the literal, to find deeper meanings in what our imaginations can hear and see. So that takes me to kind of an overview of the book of Leviticus in general, and then getting into this week's portion. Our book that we're currently reading, the book of Leviticus, seems on the surface so uneventful. I mean, the Israelite people are not moving as they moved in the book of Exodus. There's no movement from one place to another as there was in the book of Genesis. They're in one spot, and they're in one spot for one primary purpose and one purpose only, and that is to erect the Mishkan, to now conduct the ritual sacrifices that the Mishkan was set up for, and then consequently to go over a variety of rules and protocols and regulations having to do essentially, as Catherine was reading to us about, what separates pure from impure, foods that are pure from impure, and then we're going to look at certain bodily conditions that are pure or impure. So this, when we read that as a book, we think, wow, what's this got to do with us? It's somehow both uneventful as a story, it's irrelevant and distant from our lives today. And so it seems rather drawn out of any kind of life blood, so to speak, and any kind of dynamism, any kind of relevance. So that's what we're going to take a look at to see how, in some ways, in particular, our early rabbis who read not literally, but read interpretively, are able to find are able to breathe back lifeblood, if you will, are able to breathe back animation, are able to breathe back relevance into a text that seems empty of it. So we'll begin by, towards the very start of our Torah portion, the setting is that the Mishkan has been set up and it has been blessed, and the priests have been blessed, and now it's the moment for Aaron as the high priest to finally do what the Mishkan is set up to do, which is to offer up these sacrifices as a way to bring God's presence among the people. And so on verse 1, on the 8th day, Moses calls Aaron and the sons and says, okay, do what you're supposed to do. And then there in verse 7, it says, Moses said to Aaron, come close to the altar. Our medieval commentator Rashi looks at that and says, why did he say that? Why did Moses say, come close to the altar? Why didn't Moses just say, okay, now's the time, conduct the service that you've been practicing to do, conduct the service that is your job to do? Why did he have to say, come close to the altar? And what Rashi sees there is Rashi sees, as much of the early rabbis saw, a hesitation on Aaron's part. That Aaron is kind of standing there before the altar and hasn't moved forward to do what he's supposed to do. So Moses tries to overcome Aaron's hesitancy by saying, come on, come close to the altar. And the way Rashi puts it is, for Aaron was embarrassed and afraid to approach. And Moses said to him, why are you embarrassed? This is what you were selected for. And Rashi and some of the early rabbis seem to be indicating that it is the very fact that he had some degree of embarrassment that was the reason why he was selected to be in this role. And what's the nature of his embarrassment? Was he just being too humble? Oh, I'm not worthy of doing this. Moses, you should be the one doing this. The insight is that there is Aaron, and his first sacrifice is to be a calf. He's looking at the calf, and somehow that triggers in him his role of having created a golden calf, and also living this shame that he had of having participated in creating this idolatrous figure of the golden calf, and senses that he's not worthy of leading this service, that he bears this shame. Someone who bears a shame is not worthy of leading the service. And the 19th century Hasidic rabbi, the Sfat Emet, steps in and says, our commentators say that it was because of this shame that he was chosen. It was the very reason that he was chosen to be high priest was because he had experienced this bit of shame. And the Sfat Emet goes on to say, but it could also be read otherwise, that the goal of being chosen was to reach this state of shame. And Sfat Emet says, well, both interpretations are correct. Meaning that on the one hand, it was because he had experienced something that now he was worthy to lead a community. He had experienced some sense of failure. And he was now worthy of leading a service that was basically about repairing a distance between ourselves and what's holy. And then he's also suggesting that, and maybe he was chosen to lead this service to help him re-experience that shame, relive it, and go through what might be called a homeopathic remedy for his shame. To take a calf that represented, in a sense, the golden calf, to re-encounter that which had caused toxicity within his system, and through that re-encounter with the calf, to purge himself of that toxicity. So the Sfat Emet seems to be saying that, it's not the naturally and easily righteous that are meant to lead us. It's those who have proceeded through some kind of process of having engaged in some kind of grievous failure and painful recovery that are the ones that are most appropriate to lead us in a service of atonement, repair, reunion, recovery, and unity. But our midrash, known as the Sifra, takes us very directly into the life of Aaron. Because although my Torah publications reads verse 2 of chapter 9 as saying, Moses said to Aaron, take a calf of the herd. The Hebrew says, Moses said to Aaron, Kach lecha, take for yourself. It becomes very personal in the Hebrew. So here, the Sifra, the Midrash, is now going to render that very personally. Yes, it says, take for yourself a young calf as a sin offering. And the Midrash continues. This teaches that Moses said to Aaron, Aaron, my brother, even though God has been appeased to atone for your sins, you need to put something in the mouth of Satan. Send a gift ahead of you before you enter the sanctuary, lest he block your path into the sanctuary. Moses seems to be saying through this midrash, God has forgiven you for your role in the making of the golden calf. I sense you have not forgiven yourself. I sense you still carry within you that guilt and that shame. You need to go into that experience, and you need to purge yourself of that injury that you carry within you. So take for yourself a calf as a sin. If you have the study sheet, I invite you to turn it over. And our contemporary commentator, Aviva Zornberg, puts it beautifully. She says, Aaron's fear and shame perhaps represent the anxiety that the future will inevitably be like the past, that there will, in fact, be no future. that the way I've been, it's just who I am, and I'm always going to replicate that experience and that shame and that failure. I'm no different than I was as the person who broke the golden calf. That's the fear that he's got, is that nothing will ever be different. And Moses, through our midrash, is telling, yes, it's possible. It's possible to have a future that's different from the past. And that seems to be one of the primary lessons throughout all of Torah, is that who we are today is not who we have to be tomorrow. That we were slaves once doesn't mean we have to always be slaves. We can become free people. It requires not just a faith in God, it requires human initiative to achieve that. When I was thinking about this word, Rav, this draw close to the altar, Rav El Hamizbeah, that Moses says to Aaron. I thought of a more modern use of that word Krav. Krav Maga is a form of Israeli self-defense. It was actually first devised by a Hungarian Jew who then makes Aliyah in the 1930s to Israel, and he begins to teach it to others as a form of self-defense, and then it becomes the primary form of close physical combat in the Israeli army, and it's taught elsewhere here in the United States as well. So Krav Maga is based on the word Krav, which in our verb form means draw close, but the same three letters as a noun mean battle. And the word Maga means touching. So literally it means a contact combat. And so that is a way of reading what Moses is telling Aaron to do when he says, Krav, you need to go into battle inside of yourself if you are to serve in this capacity as the spiritual leader of a community. That opens up what becomes the basic notion of what prayer is in Jewish tradition. Prayer replaces the sacrificial system once the temple is destroyed by Rome. And what do our rabbis understand prayer to be? Prayer, primarily by its very verb form, is not asking God outside of ourselves to intervene and do something for us. It means to engage in a struggle within ourselves. And so here is something that the Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, known as the Ha'amek Davar, who's in Lithuania in the mid-late 19th centuries, talks about prayer. Says prayer is an act of war against the forces that petrify one's being. It's a way of overcoming our sense of being stuck. It's a way of overcoming our frozenness, our being contained and constrained and enslaved. And that's what the Exodus is all about. The Exodus on a spiritual level is freeing ourselves from that place of constraint and narrowness. And Aviva Zornberg, again, when she provides her own commentary on what Ha'amek Davar is saying, writes, prayer is not a state of intimacy with God, but a process of coming close, of overcoming impediments to intimacy. This, after all, is the nature of the service that Aaron as high priest is to engage in. It's not to offer something up to God the way some pagan religions might do. It's to initiate a process that draws us and God closer together. It's a way of overcoming, if you will, our animal selves in order to elevate our more divine selves. So let me share with you just a couple more comments, and then we'll open up for what I'm sure will be a wonderful, rich discussion. Because the book of Leviticus is indeed bereft in its black letter textual sense of any narratives, unlike Exodus and Genesis, except for two. And one of those two is here in this week's portion. And that's the story about Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, who rush forward and bring together some kind of offering, which results in their being consumed by the fire of God. And there, of course, there are lots of interpretations about that. Why did Nadab and Abihu die? What did they do wrong? And lots of suggestions. Oh, they were drunk, or oh, they were disrespectful, or oh, they weren't grounded enough in reality to survive this kind of service. And so I want to share with you something that this Midrash, the Sifra, suggests. And it's based upon the verses that we read in 22 through 23. And here are those verses from the text that we read. Aaron lifted his hands towards the people and blessed them. And he stepped down after offering the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the offering of well-being. Moses and Aaron then went inside the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the presence of God appeared to all the people. This Midrash is going to look at those verses, and it's going to wonder, why did Moses and Aaron, go into the tent of meeting after Aaron offered up those sacrifices? Why did they have to bless the people twice? And why did the presence of God appear only after Moses and Aaron came out of the tent? What they read there is there's a gap that happens between the offering up of the services and then the appearance of God's presence. There was an expectation, perhaps, on the part of everyone that the way this system was going to work was you offer up these services, and then the presence of God appears, and everything, the universe is now whole again. And instead, this Midrash is going to say, look what happens. Aaron does the services, and nothing happens. And Moses and Aaron kind of go into the tent, and then they come back out of the tent, and that's when the presence of God appears. So now they're going to understand what Nadab and Abihu did from that context of there being this gap between the operation of the sacrificial service and the presence of God. That moment of gap that's captured by Moses and Aaron then going into the tent. And they're going to look at Nadab and Abihu this way. When Aaron's sons saw that all the sacrifices had been offered and all the deeds had been done, and that the Shekinah, the presence of God, had not yet come down, Nadab said to Abihu, does anyone cook a meal without fire? Immediately they took strange thought. The way that Midrash is going to look at Nadab and Abihu is that they became impatient. They could not withstand this pause in between the operation of the service and the appearance of the presence of God. They wanted it all to happen immediately. The presence of God should have appeared just with the offering of the services. But their impatience caused them to rush in and fill the moment with what they knew how to do, which was, okay, we'll go offer up some service. We'll fill this gap with what we know how to do as priests, which is to offer up services, sacrifices. So in a sense, that takes us back to the moment of their father's shame, the creation of the golden calf. They are, in a sense, replicating the toxicity of the golden calf moment. How? Because the golden calf moment itself was born out of a moment of impatience. Moses is gone up into the mountaintop, and the people are restless, and where's God? Where's Moses? We don't know where he's gone. We don't know if God's ever going to come back. We don't know if Moses is ever going to come back. Aaron, do something. We need something now that we can call God and that we can follow. And Aaron makes the golden calf. The golden calf is a response to the inability to maintain tension for some period of time. It's the inability to sustain the ambiguity of unclarity. It's the inability to live in the gap. And that is what Nadav and Abihu represent. And they fill the gap, not with something imaginative, quite the contrary. They fill the gap. They obliterate the ambiguity. They create order by resorting to something that's quite ordinary, the offering up of a sacrifice. So the pain of all this is that Moses at the burning bush, when in response to his being commissioned to lead the people to freedom, he said, what should I call you? When people say, who commissioned you to lead us out of slavery? And the divine response he gets is, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I shall become who I shall become. This is a spirit of development, of dynamism. It's the mystery of becoming. It's a message that we are all open, that we are meant to be open to the possibility. And this is what's going to lead the people. This is what's going to dwell among the people. The mystery of becoming and the wonder that we are open to the possibility of becoming different than we currently are. And one last comment. Two last comments. One is about our painting. Our painting by Pierre Bonnard. Pierre Bonnard was called at the time an intimist because he found not just pleasure, but spiritual profundity in the intimate things in life. And many of his paintings are intimate scenes of family life, of domestic settings. And this one that is on our study sheet is that of his wife, Martha, in Bath, which she did apparently because she had some kind of tubercular condition, which was eased by the taking of baths. And in this painting, it is a fantastic painting in that literal sense, because we have here a floor that seems to undulate, walls that not only effloresce with their colors, but seem to also have a breathing capacity to them. And Martha herself is in this bathtub, which seems to adjust its shape in order to accommodate the body, almost as if the bathtub was a lover who was holding her. And when she lifts her right knee, moves its own right knee in order to accommodate her. And as she turns her head and twists it to the right, the bathtub itself will kind of push itself out a little bit to accommodate her. And Pierre Bernard is sharing with us that there's more in a scene than what our eyes see and what our logical mind can comprehend. And he was one of those, part of a very short-lived movement in France called the Navi, named after the Hebrew word for prophet, seers, people who had the capacity to see beyond the rational and the purely physical, what our physical senses are capable of comprehending. And so now the last piece I want to share with you is to acknowledge that in 1997, on a Saturday in April, when the entire Jewish world was reading this Torah portion, Allen Ginsberg died. And Allen Ginsberg was, in a sense, a Navi. He was a seer. He was someone who tried to teach us that there's more to life, not only more to life, but there's more to writing about life than the ordinary way of constructing words and phrases. And he wrote a poem, This is About Death, rather early in his career. And much of what he wrote was not only the result of his study of Hinduism and Buddhism, but his upbringing as a Jew. Here's what he wrote. Art recalls the memory of his true existence to whoever has forgotten that being is the one thing all the universe shouts. Only return of thought to its source will complete thought. Only return of activity to its source will complete activity. Listen to that. I read that as him sharing that try not to contain what it is you think God is about. All that there is being. Listen to that. So now I return with appreciation to David and Susan, that notion about what it means to hear, be attentive, and watch over it. There is a connection, just as there may well be a connection between the notion of speaking and drawing close. So with that, I'd love to know what you experienced, what you thought, what you felt. Kathleen, please share with me, and then I'll get to Norm and whoever else would like to share. Go ahead, Kathleen. And go ahead and unmute. Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Okay, these are kind of disjointed thoughts, but I was struck in this parshat by the fact that both Moses and his brother suffer a kind of impediment in terms of going forward and carrying out the will of God. And that is really a strong message, that we can't be intimidated by our impediments, that we need to struggle with that.
Oh, That's beautiful. So, Catherine, um, my granddaughter shared with me this morning a Canadian musical duo,
Mhm.
and they have the strangest music, and they wear costumes and you can't even see their faces, and one commentator that I read about this group said what they're really trying to do is they're trying to provide a counterpoint to the prevalence of AI in our lives.
Mm,
We're trying to create music that no AI could ever create.
mhm.
It is music that is clearly human in its strangeness. And I wrote back to her and I said, you know, my concern about AI, my worry about AI isn't that it will replace human beings. My concern is that it will replace our notion of what it means to be a human being.
Mhm.
It will cause us to think that that mind which functions perfectly and makes no mistakes is a superior being to a being. That's my worry, because what makes a human being full of grace is that drive to be willing to make mistakes, to take risks, and to be willing to fail. And that's what Aaron represents here, is that he is now willing to enter into himself with his brother's encouragement and understand the mistake he makes and realize that I don't have to keep making that same mistake. I can become different. And so, yeah, that notion about our two protagonists here, Moses and Aaron, as being acknowledged as being full of impediments, as you put it, uh, that Aaron is too willing to please and help create order out of chaos, rather than seeing the chaos as a way to a new way of ordering things. And that Moses carries this impediment, which we call an impediment of speech, but really is an impediment of his distance from the people he's supposed to be leading. So these are modeling for us that's what leadership is really all about. It's not those who don't make mistakes. It's those who make profound mistakes and go through a painful process of recovering from them and becoming greater than they were. So thanks so much for bringing all that rich material. Thank you. Let me call upon Norm. Go ahead.
We celebrate diversity in our lives and also in our synagogues, in our religious life. I see a study of diversity in the text. It starts with the golden calf, where God's view, of course, is that this is idolatry. It is absolutely unacceptable. And everybody is disciplined about this, and blood is shed as a result. Then we come to our Parsha today, and God gives very specific rules about how to go about observance, about the blood and the calf, the altar, what to do with the protuberance of the liver, slaughtering the ox. And there's this offering and what to do with that offering. Then along come Nadav and Avihu, and they did something different. Their divergence was not acceptable. They paid the price. They got incinerated. And instead of the fire being accepted, they were torched. And who decided that this was not okay? It was God. Right after that, Moses gives directions on how to manage the meal offering. And right after that, Eliezer and Ithamar do things differently. Moses is incensed, and he's about to go off the rails when Aaron speaks up and does perhaps the most important thing that he does in all of Torah, which is to talk sense to Moses and to initiate the precedence of people now deciding what is okay and what is not okay. The result is that Moses approved. That is to say that Moses made the decision on what was observationally okay after Aaron talked reason to him. I think this is a very important change and development in Jewish philosophy, that there's a delegation of observational responsibility that is coming into human hands now.
Okay, you've like really zeroed in on part of the trajectory of this whole journey that the Torah is narratively sharing with us, which is that there is this transfer, if you will, of power from a God outside to the being within, and and to be able to dwell in this land of promise requires an effective transfer of that kind of authority and power. And it's incredible when you kind of take a more historical view about Judaism, which is this way of being close to God, of course, is something that we haven't done for 2,000 years. And instead of it becoming just a religion-ending trauma, that we were no longer able to do what Torah told us to do, be close to God, so quickly, relatively quickly, our leadership was able to craft a different way of prayer. And it was so profoundly a shift, a disruption, and a break from what had been going on for 1,000 years. And yet it stuck and it held as an adaptive response to changing circumstances. And so I'm kind of also, I hope I'm honoring the points that you're making about this, about the diversity and the offering up of alternatives, and also the embrace of and valuation of human initiative to make those changes. I want to thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you so much. Let me call upon Richard here, and then I've got Tay and Rose who've also got their.
Thank you. A couple of things about one is about prayer, and I remember reading that do not coach the reward. Prayer is the reward. And when you talk about the impediment, we call it attention disorder. Well, we can't stand the quality, we can't wait for it to integrate, to bring in the air that God is always putting forward of continued creation and what's to be, what is going to be. And that's what we do with about righteousness to the eyes, but not in either way. And another thing that's been marketplace is the mitosis thing. And what I think that refers to is that we have two brains. We have the right brain and the left brain. And the thing is to put them together off the union. We have consistence and conditions that generate a crime, whether it's weighing in weight or something bad happened. And when you have people gathered together in a jury to, in a democratic way, rather than one answer to do it the right way, but no, you're doing something from inside. And I'll notice that in the thing about, you do it till evening, you do it until evening. Unless you touch it, then you're gonna have to watch yourself. Unless you eat of it, and then it's gonna be a longer thing. And what brought to my mind is that what's going on in your heart and in your head as you're there? Are you in the flow of the divine, or is your mind not clear enough to take it away from your ego desires? Have you gotten away from the awareness of what's going on here? Have you lost your sense of it? And as you point out, the boys who got fired, so to speak, they were anxious to get this done. What do those know? It's all about being and waiting. And the last thing was another thing that I remember. Yes, when you mentioned that go to Pharaoh, come to the altar.
Yeah.
What brought to mind is go to Pharaoh. In each case, it's something that's within you that you need to wrestle with. And what a wonderful opportunity that we're in now with having a president that put a stick in the hornet's nest. Whoa! Well, how do you, attention deficit disorder, there's no monitoring of the euphoria, the mania that's going on. When people get lost and what's happening. But if you don't get rid of that, you can walk all the way around and not touch you knowing that you're involved in a total activity. So you're not going to touch it, the corpse, or eat of it. That's not going to happen if you're in the moment here, if you're a holy people. That's what it's about.
Nicely. Thank you so much. And then let me call upon Rose, and then we'll get to Jay. Please go ahead, Rose.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to be more literal in my interpretation of the Nadav and Avihu incident. And to this, I owe to my late husband and great teacher, Larry, who was a very smart man and was on the National Fire Protection Agency, the NFPA. And he saw a lot of people do a lot of dumb things with fire and fireworks. And he was an expert witness in cases where things went blammo. And if you read the text, these Nadav and Avihu were kind of amateurs at how to light incense. You don't put, and it says not Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took his fire pan, put fire in it, and laid incense on it. And they offered before God alien fire, which had not been enjoined upon them. So basically, you're supposed to light incense, not put incense on a fire, because what happens is that sparks can come off of it, and probably they got set ablaze, and that's how they died. So basically, they screwed up. And the word zara is kind of interesting because it's an adjective meaning strange, but zara also means to kind of disperse something, like to seed something, like you go, so that an Aish zara could mean the fire dispersed. It's, scattered all over the place and they caught fire and that was it. So, sometimes a cigar is is a cigar. But what interests me then in the next sentence that Moshe says to Aaron, first of all, Moshe sounds like he's on the spectrum because he says nothing to Aaron like, oh, it's so sad that your boys died. He goes right into this, but what he quotes, he's quoting a statement that says that God's glory is transmitted to the people by those who are close to him, which basically means if you are a priest, you are a representative of God. So you can't screw up because it makes God look bad. I think that that's what he's saying. It's like, you know, you've got to be really careful. And also it's kind of like Vesti La Juba. You have, even when you're in a tragedy, if you're a professional, you have to kind of suck it up while you're in public and not show your grief. You have to do what you do what you're supposed to do. So that's kind of how I translate that. Yes, but basically whether they were rushing or whatever they were doing, but basically it's probably a very simple thing that they screwed up. They shouldn't have taken incense and thrown it into a fire because that's what happens.
Fair enough. Thank you, Rose. And let me call upon Jay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Um, first of all, I noticed something interesting in the Eighth Time version of the Chumash here. If you refer to towards the end of the parsha at the section sentence or phrase 42, and it says crawls on your belly, and the word's translated as belly, which is gahon. The letter vav is written large. Now we've had letters, I think, in this verse, that why are certain letters larger than others? And if you look at the Hebrew, it's large. For it is said that this is the middle letter of the entire Torah. Now, that's without algorithms, or somebody had to find it. And I'm gonna by next session, I'm gonna prove if this is right or wrong, and how many verses it's right or wrong by. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that these sages are accurate. But it says,
Jay, where are you? Sorry, in the Torah? What chapter?
This is the very end of our parsha here, Leviticus. It says
very end.
all the things that swarm, and then the next says it says 42.
40.
It says like crawling on your belly like a reptile. 42. It says you shall not eat among other things that swarm that crawls on its belly. And the word belly, gahon, gahon. If you look at the Hebrew, mine has an asterisk, but the vav is very, very large. And it's interesting that the large vav, according to the author, symbolizes the unique upright posture of a human being. There is something repugnant about a person who crawls instead of standing up for what he or she believes.
No.
Foregoing the unique upright posture of a human being, which is symbolized by the enlarged letter vav. So I saw this, and then I also thought about a couple of other things. The painting was completed. I think he started it by using his wife as a model in the bathtub, but he completed it 4 or 5 years after she died.
4 years after, yeah.
And it ties in exactly with Allen Ginsberg's poem. To me, it's like that Allen Ginsberg, he could have been reading Allen Ginsberg's poem in doing the painting, because existence and activity and all, he's returning all of it to its source is what he's doing. And the third thing I was going to say is that I took over almost 4 years of Krav Maga in a studio locally, and it is close or forward combat. combat contact, close, forward. And similar to what Aaron and all this hesitation, the only possible things that you can do in the event of a situation which needs your attention is you can run, which they recommend. The first couple of weeks of training are all getting away from danger. You can hide if it's logistically possible, or you fight. And by fighting, it's not a sense of fighting like, oh, slap, 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 slap. It's if you'd like to come into my holy space, if you'd like to come into my sphere here, which belongs to me, I'm going to stop you first with a small gesture. And if not, Aaron and Navihu, I'm going to just make you go away. And it has nothing to do with basically death or anything like that. You're just trained to deal accordingly with something. Now, this whole thing is tying together for me because it really made it clear to me that when you read, there's a thread that goes all the way from what we read throughout our Torah sheet, all the way through like Allen Ginsberg. This is stuff where you talked about AI. Let's not go to where AI is doing all of this for us. That's exactly what I can hear from what you're saying, Rabbi. This would be a shame to have machines doing this for us.
Well, one thing I want, you try to draw, you drew us a connection between the painting and the poem. And what I will say about that is the painting was completed in 1946. And I believe Allen Ginsberg wrote the poem in 1947. I think that those dates are right. What you want to make of that? I had not thought of the way in which you.
No, I didn't mean that it was consciously, that he consciously knew about the painting, but the artist went through the actions that Allen Ginsberg a year later is calling for. The painting was already done, but while the painter was creating that painting, he was going through the processes that Ginsberg is telling us. What is the actual thing that you must do upon death?
Well, another way you helped me to see the painting is that sometimes you see a room and what you primarily focus on are the borders and the differentiations of the aspects of the room. There's the wall, there's the floor, there's the bathtub, there's the chair and the person. And what Bernard has done here is made everything in it more fluid than we might normally perceive them. There's an undulation of all those elements. There's a way in which, who knows, but that in a moment's time, where the floor is might be where the wall is, that all these things seem to be blending, melting together. And it might be that Bernard is trying to share with us something about the primary state of all things, that the primary state of all things is to be in dynamic motion, to be fluid. And that in a sense is also, I think, what Allen Ginsberg in his poem is saying, that to the extent that we try and freeze everything, to fetishize everything, to create a static place for everything, then we are not in touch with the very nature of what the universe is all about. And there is a picture of our good friend Dave there, who's immersed in the universe himself right now with the earth behind him. So these notions that things are constantly, and this is what physics is now telling us. In fact, physics is now telling us, you think something is in one place, but one thing can actually be in two places at once. That's how dynamic and fluid and in flux everything is. And our text is in a sense, trying to tell, and we are too. We are flexible. We are flexible and flexible. And we're not static. And we're not done. We're not cooked and done. And so to hear this back to what I gave title to for this week's study sheet, The Way to the Future. The way to the future, as I saw in this week's portion, has to do with Moses' encouragement to his brother to say, proud, do battle within yourself so that you can then be fulfilling of your responsibility to be in charge of this ritual at the altar. And you need to go inside of yourself and dress that part of yourself which is holding you back from being in this moment for the sake of the future. And so the way to the future is to deal with our fears, our sense of shame, our regrets, whatever, our sense of failures. And then if we are able to create a process that helps us to recover from those, then we're able to move into the future. I see that Justin, Linda, you please share with us.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Rabbi, I had a question, but of course it escapes me now because I have so many questions. Questions on questions. I think I was looking for the Vav and I found it in Chumash. So I think I'm cool. Really, I've been so inspired. I'm just like a library rat, just running around taking notes and referencing. So it's been great. Thank you so much. And sorry for forgetting my hand was up.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody because one thing that is clear about our tradition is
Oh,
that
Rabbi, I remember. So I'm reading in Chumash, thanks, Rose, that you're not allowed to eat anything, according to Rashi, that creeps on its belly, like a snake or a worm. But Jewish fishermen, don't they use worms to catch their fish? Or what do Jewish fishermen use? Because once it's in the, I mean, how does that work, Rabbi? If something eats something that you're not supposed to eat, isn't it like you use the worm to catch the fish? It's in the worm's body, but it hasn't been assimilated and metabolized by the worm. There's still a worm inside the body of the fish. Does the Midrash say anything about that? Like the what is that? A mosquito or some kind of dragonfly or something inside of a fig? Like it takes this wasp or something to actually create the fig to pollinate, right? And then it becomes
Those
subsumed.
figs aren't kosher.
So figs aren't kosher. But why would a fish be
Well,
kosher?
there's more than one opinion. And we could talk about locusts. That was right in the middle of this. It says all locusts. That doesn't turn out to be the case.
like what Linda is challenging us is the notion that, okay, you can't directly eat certain things, but can you eat permitted things that may have eaten the forbidden things?
Right. And not metabolized it because it dies instantly after it's in its body. So it's there utterly as itself. The worm is there as its wormness.
Yeah, you don't eat the contents of the stomach of whatever it is that you're eating.
I know, but
Yeah.
you break an oven if anything unclean falls upon it, it's demolished, right? You crack a bowl if something unclean comes into it. Why don't you crack the body of the fish?
Generally,
I'm
we're
just
not.
saying that Nadav and Abihu's death really bothers me, and the unfairness of it, the rabbinic artistry of the brothers to bring their own beingness, their own love of Hashem and their family, and this incredible new religion and the rituals, and my gosh, how excited they must have been, only to, as Rose said, blow themselves up. What was your great word, Rose? Blammo. right? I mean, it's the cruelty of this Bible never ceases to stun me and inspire me. And I know that there's got to be some sort of meta reason for this. Like we have to be smarter and not just think, well, Hashem, why is it so cruel? So
Well,
maybe
that's the point, but I don't think it was necessarily, I mean, you have to argue whether everything that happens is directly caused by God, and that goes into the whole problem of evil, which we definitely don't have time for at this point. But I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the problem of evil that God, causes. No, what I was describing was these guys screwed up. And, and it's translated as God made this happen, made them an example. But basically, they just screwed up because they didn't know how to light incense.
I was so stunned by earlier in the portion, they make some sort of, I don't know, did they make a mistake? But they do something, and the portion says, but it's something that Aaron and Moses had already done. And these two brothers, they, I guess, accidentally or just from their zeal or something, they just do it again. And in that moment, I was like, oh gosh, that's kind of wrong. And I thought of Ray Fiennes' character from Schindler's List, where he's like, oh, yes, you couldn't clean the bathtub once. I forgive you, you may go. And when the boy couldn't clean the bathtub the second time, it was blammo, right? And immediately I thought of that moment of like, we can give you a little mercy, but not too much mercy. We're not a religion of mercy. We're a religion of, I don't know, delicious pastry and lots of fighting.
Yeah, we are a religion of
does.
mercy and cruelty. And
But
cruelty.
how, David, how
But
can we say it's mercy, but also the worst? It's the best and then also the total worst.
and hold it in the same mind, because if you have a large enough mind, you can hold them both.
But we don't have to enact them both. And that's my problem with this text. It's that it keeps being enacted and not held. That's the problem for me. To hold that, I totally agree. But then, of course, as Rabbi says that I wrote it down, do not try to contain the whatness of Hashem. So
Catherine, do you have
thank you, Catherine.
something to offer? You want to share something?
Yes, the little dog on the rug,
Little
the
dog.
painting
Yeah, go ahead about the little dog.
that is still there, regardless of what is happening to this woman.
Wow.
She is fading. She is,
Wow.
yeah, fusing with the,
That's a companion, right?
yeah.
The little dog is not shifting into something else. That little dog and her persist.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That's from the heart, I know. So thank you for bringing something from your heart.
Mhm.
And Linda, your passionate quest to try and make sense of all material is like a work of art in and of itself. Okay? So, because
Thank
the
you, Rabbi. I'm not trying to make sense. Okay, I am trying to make sense of it. I just don't get the meanness.
so I don't know that there's no meanness, right? There just isness.
Okay.
And and what the rabbis are trying to do with this material is not make sense of it. They're trying to understand human beings. They're not even trying to, I'm going to say something radical, which is they're not even trying to understand God. They're trying to understand what it is that drives human beings to act the way they do, and how can we learn from that, be better human beings. And one of the things that makes a better human being is what you're doing, Linda. You're not satisfied, not to be satisfied with prosaic, simplistic, rationalizing answers. And what you have demonstrated is what drives all of Jewish spirituality, which is not the answer, but the question. And in a sense, that's also what drives science. Science is not driven by answers. Answers just become the platform for the next question. And scientists understand no matter what I come up with, what it's going to do, it's going to create an incendiary of new questions. And that is good. And so this is a very incendiary text. There's fire all around. And some of the fire seems to be destructive, and some of the fire seems to not even consume that which it is burning. So this text, the Talmud text, Zohar text, Jewish story text, they are all driven by the propulsion to want to go and find out something deeper. To unpeel the next layer to get to the next question of things. And that is what drives the Passover Seder. The Passover Seder is not driven by a recitation of answers about things. The Passover Seder is driven by children saying, "What's going on?" Doing. And the answers, to the extent there are answers, are not doctrinal statements. They're stories. And stories themselves generate wonderment. And what we've been doing tonight, which is playing with the narrative to try and understand, how could this possibly be? What was in their minds? What could they have been thinking? Why would they have been doing this? And we ask those questions because we're provoking ourselves internally to try and figure out ourselves and our relationship with one another. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your incendiary presence and for illuminating capacities through your rich questions, your insights, your provocations. And they all help me find a way to the future. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Rabbi,
Rabbi.
before you turn it off, everybody might want to look at the link that I put in the chat.
Yeah, I copied it. I'll look at it later.
Yeah, just
And-
copy it.
And the Artemis is landing off of San Diego at 5:07 p.m. Pacific time.
Yay!
It's profound. And see what the astronaut said on Easter morning. It was profound about our planet, and
Well,
it
the
was just
agony and the ecstasy.
Nice.
the agony and the ecstasy.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, so much. Yep. Let's do this again, okay?